Welcome to True Crime Threads, where we unravel the chilling tales that lurk beneath the surface of small-town life. Join us as we dive into the tragic story of a sheriff whose dark secrets lead to devastating consequences. Sheriff John Walters was the kind of man the townspeople trusted without question. Tall, strong, and known for his steady demeanor, he had spent years building a reputation as a reliable figure, keeping the streets safe and the townsfolk reassured. His position held influence, and his name carried weight. Yet, hidden beneath this layer of respectability was a side of Sheriff Walters no one suspected, a secret that could shatter his hard-earned image in an instant. Among the faces Walters greeted daily was Emily, a 19-year-old college student who had only recently moved back to her hometown. She was bright and hopeful, with aspirations that extended far beyond the narrow confines of their small community. Though Emily's life had been marked by the usual challenges of young adulthood, she was determined to make something of herself. She had returned home for a break from her studies, unsure of her future path but certain of one thing: she wanted to escape the monotony of small-town life. Their paths crossed unexpectedly one quiet evening at the local diner. Walters was a regular there, a staple presence with a quiet coffee and brief exchanges with the waitstaff. Emily, meanwhile, had taken a summer job as a waitress, saving money for her upcoming semester. Their first interaction was harmless enough: a few casual words, a smile exchanged over coffee. But over the days, that routine turned into something more: a glance held just a moment too long, a shared smirk, subtle compliments. Emily, flattered by the attention from such an established figure, found herself drawn in by Walter's confident charm. The meetings quickly became clandestine. It was easy for Walters to arrange their encounters as sheriff. He knew the hidden trails and secluded spots within the town. Emily, caught between youthful curiosity and infatuation, willingly followed him. She had no experience with men like him, men whose charisma and power created an allure she couldn't easily resist. As their encounters continued, Walters grew more possessive, wrapping her in a web of secrecy, cautioning her against sharing details with friends or family. Emily obliged, swept up in the thrill of a connection that felt almost forbidden. But beneath his outward confidence, Walters was always cautious. He knew the lines he was crossing, and he understood that his position, once powerful, would crumble if the truth were to surface. Despite the risk, he couldn't bring himself to end it. Their meetings continued, always under the cover of darkness, in secluded areas far from prying eyes. The thrill of secrecy only fueled his desire to control every aspect of their hidden world. Emily, however, began to feel a tension simmering beneath the surface. What had started as a whimsical adventure was quickly taking a darker turn. Though she was drawn to the sheriff's mysterious allure, a sense of unease grew, an unspoken warning that her life was being tangled in something far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. As the months went by, Sheriff Walters' erratic behavior became more noticeable, especially to those closest to him in the sheriff's department. His once impeccable record of punctuality and reliability began to fray, replaced by frequent absences and an air of distraction that puzzled even his most loyal deputies. Of all his colleagues, Deputy Ben Myers noticed it the most. Myers had known Walters for years and admired him deeply, seeing him as a mentor and guide in the complex world of law enforcement. But recently, Myers had grown uneasy. Something about Walters didn't seem right. It began with small things. Walters would disappear without warning, leaving only a brief excuse behind, claiming he had personal matters to attend to. At first, Myers brushed it off, assuming his boss was simply dealing with something outside work. But soon, the absences became more frequent, disrupting the department's operations. Walters often left in the middle of crucial meetings or failed to respond to urgent calls, leaving Myers to handle the growing workload. The town, too, began to take note of the sheriff's absence. Some residents whispered about his unusual behavior, though few dared to question it outright. Myers started to piece together a troubling pattern. Walters often left without his phone, avoiding calls and texts that might interrupt his strange disappearances. The evasiveness struck Myers as odd. As a sheriff, Walters rarely went anywhere unannounced, and he was known for his commitment to the job. The evasiveness raised suspicions Myers couldn't ignore. He wondered what could be so important that Walters would risk his professional integrity and risk the town's safety to pursue it. One night, unable to resist his curiosity, Myers decided to follow Walters after he left the station abruptly. Keeping a safe distance, Myers trailed him down winding roads that led to the town's outskirts. To his surprise, he saw Walters' car veer off onto a hidden path in the woods, well away from the beaten trails known to locals. Myers watched from afar, his heart pounding as he considered the implications of his boss's secrecy. The secluded location added to the mystery, and the sight of Walters meeting a shadowy figure near the edge of the trees left Myers with a sinking feeling. The situation gnawed at him. In his gut, Myers sensed something was very wrong. Over the next several days, he watched Walters even more closely, noting the odd times and places he chose to vanish, each disappearance reinforcing the unease Myers felt. Soon, whispers about Walters began spreading, the kind of quiet gossip that could easily slip into suspicion. It was clear the sheriff was hiding something significant, something dangerous. And with each day that passed, Myers found himself facing an unavoidable decision. Should he dig deeper and risk exposing his boss? Or should he protect the man he'd long respected and stay silent, hoping whatever was hidden would stay buried? Determined to uncover the truth, Deputy Ben Myers became increasingly vigilant, watching Sheriff Walters with an intensity he could barely disguise. His unease had deepened, and he could no longer ignore the strange behavior and whispered rumors circulating around the sheriff. Myers understood that the situation required caution. Walters was not just his superior, he was the town's protector, a man who had earned the trust of the community. Yet, Myers could not shake the feeling that something dark lay beneath Walters' polished reputation. After several weeks of discreet observation, Myers' suspicions reached a breaking point. Late one evening, as the sheriff left the station without explanation, Myers followed him once again. Through winding back roads and overgrown paths, he carefully kept his distance, his headlights dimmed to avoid drawing attention. Walter's car made its way toward the outskirts, into the dense forest that surrounded the town. The road was familiar to Myers, yet it was rare for anyone to venture so deep into the woods without a specific purpose. He followed until he saw Walters pull over and park in a small clearing hidden from view. Myers parked his own car at a safe distance, stepping out quietly to approach on foot. His pulse quickened as he crept through the underbrush, moving closer to Walters' car, only to realize that the sheriff was not alone. Standing beside him in the dim light was a young woman Myers instantly recognized as Emily. He hadn't expected this. The sheriff's strange behavior made more sense now, but the truth was unsettling. Myers watched in silence, absorbing the scene with a sense of disbelief. The sheriff's movements were affectionate yet possessive as he spoke to Emily, his gestures controlling, keeping her close as if she belonged to him. For a moment, Myers felt a pang of sympathy for the girl. She seemed nervous, glancing around as though afraid of being seen, and the fear in her eyes revealed that this secret relationship was more than she could handle. Myers couldn't imagine what had led her to this situation, but he understood immediately that it was wrong, dangerous even, for her to be tangled up with the sheriff. As Myers continued watching from his hidden vantage point, an uneasy realization sank in. The sheriff's obsession with Emily had not only crossed professional boundaries, but had also become a personal risk to her safety. The way Walters held her, his intense gaze and dominating posture, unsettled Myers deeply. He could see the strain in Emily's expression, the doubt and fear that seemed to cloud her once hopeful demeanor. Her once innocent attraction had turned into something more sinister, a connection that held her captive. The gravity of the situation settled heavily on Myers. He now held a secret he could neither ignore nor easily expose. If he reported Walter's actions, he could destroy the sheriff's career and bring scandal to the town. Yet staying silent would make him complicit in hiding a dangerous affair. Standing in the shadows, Myers wrestled with his next move, feeling the weight of his duty against the fragile trust he once had in his boss. The decision would require a courage he had never tested, a choice that could alter the lives of everyone involved. The tension between Sheriff Walters and Emily had been building steadily, with each encounter leaving her more conflicted than the last. What had once been thrilling now felt stifling, the sheriff's possessiveness becoming suffocating. Emily had long realized that her involvement with him was a mistake, and her desire to break free grew stronger every day. Yet each time she tried to put distance between them, Walters would find a way to pull her back, his words laced with promises and thinly veiled threats that filled her with dread. Emily knew that ending the relationship would not be easy. Walters was too invested, too controlling, and his position made it difficult for her to escape without consequence. One autumn evening, Emily resolved to meet Walters and finally tell him it was over. She had thought carefully about her decision, planning each word in the hope that he might let her go without incident. The meeting place was a secluded spot deep in the forest, far from any passerby. As she made her way there, a chill of apprehension crept over her, the forest silent except for the rustling leaves and the occasional snap of a twig. She couldn't shake the feeling that this night would be different, that the confrontation she feared was about to unfold in a way she couldn't control. When Emily arrived, she found Walters waiting, his face unreadable in the fading light. She hesitated, but then began explaining, trying to convey her need for freedom without angering him. Yet, as she spoke, Walter's expression darkened. Her words stirred something volatile in him, a barely restrained fury mixed with desperation. He argued with her, his voice low and tense, each word laced with a possessiveness that made Emily's skin crawl. The calm authority he showed in public was nowhere to be found, replaced by a dangerous edge that left her shaken. In his mind, Emily was his, and the idea of her leaving him filled him with a sense of betrayal that quickly turned to rage. The conversation escalated, voices raised in the silence of the forest, until in a fit of anger and fear of losing control, Walters acted impulsively. What happened next was a blur, an act of violence he hadn't planned, a moment of irreversible anger that changed everything. Emily's body fell to the forest floor, lifeless, as Walters stood over her, the weight of his actions sinking in slowly with horrifying clarity. The forest, which had been their place of secrecy and stolen moments, was now the scene of a tragedy. Walter's mind raced as he processed what he had done, the shock numbing him to the horror of it all. He stood frozen, knowing that his entire life had just shattered in an instant. The respect, the authority, the carefully built reputation, all of it was gone, destroyed by his own hand in a moment of uncontrollable anger. In the following minutes, reality returned with a crushing weight, and Walters realized he couldn't stay there. Desperate, he tried to cover his tracks, dragging Emily's body deeper into the woods and hastily concealing her with leaves and branches. But he knew it was futile. The town would come looking, and when they did, it would be the end of everything he'd built. His heart pounded as he hurriedly left the scene, returning to his car with shaking hands and a sense of dread so deep it consumed him. He drove away, leaving the quiet forest behind, the weight of what he had done pressing down on him with a suffocating finality. The next morning, the town awoke to the news that Emily had disappeared. Her friends reported her missing after she failed to return home, and her absence sparked immediate concern. Search parties were quickly organized, led by Deputy Ben Myers, who suspected that Emily's vanishing might be linked to the secret he had uncovered. Despite the weight of his suspicions, Myers held on to a hope that she might still be found safe. Yet, as the hours passed with no sign of Emily, the mood shifted from hopeful to grim, an unsettling tension hanging over the town like a dark cloud. As the search parties combed through the town and the surrounding woods, rumors began to swirl, fueled by whispered questions about the sheriff's connection to Emily. People remembered Walter's odd behavior, the sudden absences and erratic actions, and unease spread through the community. The sheriff himself was noticeably absent from the search efforts, claiming to be busy with department matters. His absence only added to the growing suspicion, and Deputy Myers found himself questioning how long he could remain silent. Days into the search, a breakthrough finally came when a search party stumbled upon disturbed earth deep within the forest. Among the leaves and branches lay Emily's body, hidden hastily, but not enough to escape the sharp eyes of the searchers. News of the discovery spread quickly, casting a shadow of grief and horror over the town. The once peaceful community now had to confront the grim reality of a violent crime that hit far too close to home. Emily was no longer just a missing person, she was the victim of a brutal end that left the townsfolk reeling. The investigation escalated, and with mounting pressure, Deputy Myers knew he could no longer withhold what he had discovered. He brought his evidence to the higher authorities, detailing the secret meetings he had observed and the sheriff's obsessive behavior toward Emily. As the investigation zeroed in on Walters, the pieces began to fall into place, painting a picture of a man who had allowed his power and obsession to drive him to violence. Confronted with the weight of evidence against him, Walters was stripped of his badge, his respected position crumbling around him as the truth of his actions came to light. The arrest of Sheriff Walters sent shockwaves through the town. The man who had once been its protector, who had symbolized safety and justice, was now revealed as the very threat the townspeople feared. In the following weeks, more details of his relationship with Emily surfaced, adding to the collective horror and grief. The town grappled with disbelief, mourning not only the loss of a young life but also the shattering of their trust in a man they had revered. Emily's death left an indelible scar on the community, a painful reminder of the darkness that had lurked behind a familiar face. In the end, justice was served, but at a cost the town could hardly bear. The echoes of the tragedy lingered in every corner, in every whisper, leaving a haunting reminder of the sheriff's fall from grace and the price of secrecy. The townsfolk were left to pick up the pieces, haunted by the memory of Emily and forever changed by the hidden darkness that had been brought into the light.